All right. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Processing with Sam and Malik, a weekly take on life through the lens of husbands, fathers, Philly sports fans, and most importantly, believers. As always, this episode is brought to you by Sam's Community TV, creating content to establish a community through genuine relationship building. And before we start tonight's episode, I want to ask you to please make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification button. Subscription button keeps you connected to our community, and a notification button will notify you anytime one of our episodes are airing, because we would love for you to join us live. Now, if you enjoyed the episode while you're watching it, please hit the like button and help us conquer algorithm. Malik, how are we doing, man?
I'm good, man. We're fully in the summer right now. Kids have been out down here in Texas, they've been out for about a month now, or almost a month.
A month?
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, like we're closer to the end of summer than the beginning of summer at this point.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they have not known how to act. They've not had bedtimes. We've not had a routine. I'm exhausted. We've been just basically shuttling back and forth to camp for the last month. But life is good, man. How are you?
Hey, man, we just survived our first week with the kids. So we had move up day last Friday. So this Monday, Friday that we just experienced was the first time, kind of sort of all hands on in terms of our summer experience. So far, so good. Got through the first week. We kind of have a game plan for the first couple of weeks, and then, we'll see how the rest of summer goes. But yeah, summer is definitely it's amongst us, man. And I don't know, with Texas, you guys, your weather in my mind is always warm. Any changes there for you guys, or?
Nah, people just complain here, man. It's crazy. It's like they never spent a summer outside before. Like, wake up, you're surprised the sun is there. Like, that's a story if it's not. But here, we act like it's not going to be 95 degrees every single day. Like, what are you talking about? That's what it is in the South.
That's what it is.
It's what it is.
Hey, speaking about it being what it is, I mean, Boston was Boston all year long. And now they're champs. It is what it is. And I know I saw Jason Tatum, he said, people wanted to know what we would do if we didn't win. I guess we'll never know, that old Kanye line.
Right.
I mean, was it a foregone conclusion? Are
it should have been
the new kings of the NBA?
I mean, it should have been. They won, 60 games this year. They made a road to destruction of everybody they played. And the craziest thing to me is how much, he and Jaylen Brown, the whole narrative about there being haters, they were just better than everyone. I mean, far and away better. And you were, not you, but generally speaking, the royal you, was trying to find a reason to pick somebody else. Dallas was actually favored at the beginning of the series.
Really?
Or the money was on Dallas. The heavy money was on, the heavy money was on Dallas.
That makes sense.
Relatively speaking, it's like, listen, you might as well just wrote a check to Goodwill because you weren't going to see that. Like, you needed everything to go right. And quite honestly, the Mavs had a chance in the first two games. Porzingis gets hurt, and you think maybe there's something. Kyrie never showed up. Luka's defense was a turnstile, and that was the series.
What do you think about the situation in terms of Kyrie sort of not being there in the first two games?
I think it's more indicative of, I think Kyrie in general, I'm not going to assess his season. I don't think you can assess his season by looking at the last series and saying that he wasn't successful. Kyrie was traded, I don't even remember what it was. I don't even think it was nearly a package that was commensurate with his talent. I have to go back and look and see, but I feel like the Mavericks stole him.
Yeah.
And he became a bona fide, in fact, let me look that up while we're talking. He became a bona fide Batman 1A, depending on the situation. And so you look at what he did, the fact that he hadn't been playing, and now he gives you a full season and stability. Like, let's go back and pull it up. He was traded for a 2029 first round pick, multiple seconds, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Dorian Finney-Smith. Let that wash over you for a second.
So the only players in the deal were Dinwiddie and Finney-Smith?
Yes, and a first round in 2029. Right?
Right.
So meanwhile, you're hearing names like
Like,
Caruso, multiple firsts, Brandon Ingram, multiple firsts, Mikal Bridges, multiple firsts, and you got to take a negative asset. And Kyrie, who is everybody talks about as one of the most talented players in the NBA, was a first and marginal players, like a sixth, seventh guy on your rotation, maybe. That's what he got traded for. So all in all, the season was a win. I think it was more indicative of the fact that we talk about the Celtics needed the process to kind of get there and go through their trials. Luka's gotten there Luka's going deep several times down. He's not ready. He's not ready. He's got to come back in better shape. He's got to defend.
So here's where I'll offer a perspective specifically to Luka. So Luka, if you're listening, I got you, man.
I'm sure he is.
I think that we forget Luka was hobbled with the knee injury. And it's important to note because we're talking about his defensive effort, his defensive intensity, etc. And I don't disagree that he has to give more in order to become a champion on that side of the ball. But I will say that there's a part of me that realizes if I am labored and it's my knee and I'm playing against explosive perimeter players, I got to pick and choose in terms of what my impact is going to be. And if I'm really going to try to stay in front, I know it's going to be at the cost of my offense ultimately, and it could be at the long-term cost of my offense. So there's where I will defend Luka, where I would speak to my client, quite frankly, is the whole his mannerisms and behavior.
That's the next part.
It's like
that's the next point.
I would take exception and really try to eliminate that from my game altogether. People don't care in the playoffs. To me, it was Joel Embiid like as a Sixers fan.
That's the point. That's it. You're hitting it.
Game where yes, something didn't go favorable for you, but we don't care that it bothers you in that moment. We need you in this scenario to just grit through it and use it as fuel to overcome whatever it is. And when you complain and sort of visibly show the fans to kind of whine with you, you're going to lose people in this kind of high stakes situation. This is where we need you to be stoic. This is where we need you to have that LeBron Game 6 in Boston.
Grit, resolve, right.
Boston, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the version of you that fans want now. And even though they allowed you to whine throughout the season and it felt acceptable, he now knows that it's not on this stage.
I agree. I think you hit it. There were too many moments in which he was angry about a call or throwing up his hands and his man's leaking back the other direction. And I think that bleeds into effort. I think that bleeds into leadership. And for all intents and purposes, whether or not he's realized he's the best guy, he might be the most talented player on the court, but that can be diminished. Like the same way, I forget who it was, but I think it was Bill Parcells years ago that talked about, the best players, the best available. What was it? The best abilities availability. The best abilities availability. It would help if I could speak, right? For all of the talents that these guys have, we look at their athleticism, we look at their ball handling, shooting. In the playoffs, your mental acumen, your discipline becomes as critical as some of those other pieces. I mean, honestly, you look at dudes like Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but it's probably a really good question. It's probably a really good question because he's diminished himself. He's an Olympian. He's an all-star, right? Or he's been an all-star. He's now a two-time champion, and he's probably recognized. I don't know what his All-NBA, if he's been on All-NBA. I'm sure he has been. But he's probably one of those guys who's like, I'm going to subjugate myself some so we can win. And that's what's required. So despite the fact that he's all-world defender, can go out and get a bucket, can shoot, distribute, whatever, he just plays all-world defense and locks up the most talented guy on the court 9 times out of 10.
It's scary what they've done in Boston. And here's what's even worse. They're gonna convey one of their picks this year for acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. they acquired a first round pick from the Golden State Warriors in order to get Porzingis. So they get that going into this year's draft. It's almost obnoxious when you just see how a good organization can separate themselves in a league that forces parity as much as possible, where you have a cap. So the most the team with the biggest coffers doesn't just have this automatic advantage.
Right.
You have sort of the draft scenario that again creates the parity in terms of accessibility to the picks, and then you have the ability to draft assets with any other team. You have precedent in terms of um, drafts that were made previously, and somehow Boston is able to come out of a trade, and you immediately look at it and you're saying, "Wait a minute, why does it seem so heavy on this side of the ledger?"
So do you think that with Sixers only really having Council, Maxey, and Embiid, that there's any chance that the Sixers even get on the same? I don't even say level. That's not even a question. I don't think Morey's going to go out and get 7 dudes to build a team. Like, the likelihood of him hitting on 7 players to build a team is not high. So what all this showed me is like their leadership, their vision, their culture. Sixers are light years away.
Here's the part about Boston right now that I had to acknowledge. Even I'll just say, the northeastern corridor, and I'm excluding Philadelphia. I know this is a national show, global show, but even the national idea, the Northeast includes Philadelphia. But I'm talking about upper Northeast. And when you think about the way UConn is building their program, and now you have the Boston Celtics, I even think about the parallels in terms of the mindset of the coaches. I just watched Joe Mazzulla, 2010, West Virginia versus Kentucky. He played for Bob Huggins. Like, he's a Bob Huggins disciple. That's who Boston has. Bob Huggins disciple. He is building a program there, and he's getting superstars that are committed to that brand of basketball. They're going to, like, Boston's going to be one of those teams that only bring in Boston type players. Like, they're not going to just go get guys the same way the Sixers will just swing at guys to try to make it work. They're not just going to go get guys. They're going to get certain types of guys that fit exactly what they want to do. And I just think they have a runway here that I'm unclear in terms of
when it ends. What stops it?
The competition is already starting to emerge themselves as maybe even jockeying to play against them. Seriously, I think they're going to be teams that fly through, and year after year might be someone else, but I just think Boston's going to be there.
They're the clear front runner going in again. The East. You're looking at. Are we going to really trust Doc Rivers in Milwaukee? Are you really going to trust? You trust Giannis, but do you trust Doc leading Giannis? Right. Indiana's young and they're growing, but I don't think physically they're going to be able to match the size and defensive capability. Halliburton was in shackles on Juneteenth. Halliburton was in shackles, right? Brother still wasn't free. So I don't really know that there's another team that can ascend to that level and really give them a run. It's everybody out west.
It is everybody out. I think you're right. But so why don't we do that then, right? So why don't we jump into what our own team could potentially do to try to compete with a Boston Celtics type team. So again, to your point, we have four guys on roster, right? No, because Paul, his guarantee was only if we made it to the second round, which we did not. So you have Ricky Council, you have Maxey, and you have Embiid.
Yep.
Obviously, Maxey's going to get that Supermax extension. The numbers really don't matter. We're not using the cap at this point.
Right.
There's an extension. Embiid is also extension eligible. I would assume that they also get him committed and locked in for a long-term plan, because if not, then what are we talking about in terms of any free agent targets if these guys aren't willing to extend? So if we make those two assumptions, what do we do? I am of the belief that of the roster we had last year, I would like us to bring back Buddy Hield. And I'm going to say his name first. That's right. Broad Street, baby. Bring back Buddy Hield because I think you need time for him and Embiid to play with each other. I think he's really a floor spacer, the type of floor space you need. I think his career suggests one thing. And yes, I know he didn't hit the ground running when we needed him to. But I think with an off season, there's an opportunity to really get the kind of production and floor spacing that I think will be unique to a team that has an Embiid and a Maxey. So I think if you can get Buddy Hield in the fold and he can be the Buddy Hield that we've known his whole career, I think we're in a better position. Batum, again, his minutes will be down, but I think he's a type of player that allows the rest of the players to learn and understand how to play the right way. He's such a connective passer that I think when he's not on the floor, guys will lament him not being on the floor and encourage other players to play and to do the kinds of things that he does. Right. Like, I just think that he's that impactful because of his unselfishness. And then he's also unique in terms of his length as a defender. He's crafty. He's an old vet, wily vet. And he can make shots in critical moments, I think. Here's where things get interesting. Now, Oubre, I think, is also a guy you got to bring back. Right. Now, his role, you can manage whatever his role will be in terms of a starter versus off the bench. I think to me, he's preferably off of the bench in terms of just green light, go get buckets. But that's my idea in terms of who we bring back from last year's team. Campaign, I'm comfortable with. If it happens, if it doesn't happen, I know Kyle Lowry is a name that Nick Nurse is comfortable with. I'm just curious in terms of what his role is. If he is your starter, I'm out. I'm out on a Kyle Lowry starter for this next season if we're really talking about competing with Boston.
Let me throw a name. We talked about him before, early when we started doing this. You've heard names like your Ingrams, your Butlers, your Paul Georges, whatever it is. If I think of that group, if you can go get any of those three, it's Paul. I don't necessarily love the idea because Paul George is 34, 35. He might be a little bit diminished. There's some injury issues, although I think he played a lot of his games this year. But he's of that group, the only one that you don't actually have to trade anything for. You can just go out and get him. You don't have to get up any picks or anything like that. So he makes the most sense for me in that space. I agree with you on the majority of those players. I'm a little surprised you said Hield. I would go maybe a different direction and send whatever picks I could to Utah. And I'd go get marketing, and I would see if I could steal Sexton in the process. I would see if I could steal Sexton. I like the idea of having an additional ball handler who can create off the dribble, who is a good shooter, small. So our backcourt would definitely need some size back there, right? So, you hope that Paul George has still got enough legs to go out there and play their best wing perimeter guy. But I like the idea of let's go out. If we're going to allocate picks towards improving this team, Ingram is a talented dude, but I don't necessarily know that I love Ingram in terms of his fit. And you talk about a grit and culture. I like the idea that Marketing as a shooter, as a rebounder, he's a skilled big man. Colin Sexton's a dog. I like that. And now, so we're looking at some of the guys that you mentioned. I would have a Sexton. I would have a Marketing. I would have no first round picks. But then I can start to kind of see what my starting five looks like. Where Marketing and Embiid, I think, fits well together. If you want to have a Batum, or if somehow we were able to be so fortunate to also bring in a Paul George, whatever, because we had that flexibility, the cap wise. So if there are things that we can do where Utah is an option, I would really consider that as where I'm going to spend my draft capital because of the point you made. You just said, like, if we're talking about signing Embiid if we're not going to sign Embiid to extension, what are we talking about? We're not building picks to hold on and hope they grow with Embiid. So where are you going to spend those picks? Mikal Bridges is not getting traded, right? I don't want Jimmy Butler. God bless him. I don't want him. Not now. We should have kept him. I don't want him now. So where are you going to go send those picks?
But I don't disagree with what you are saying. My only concern is dealing with Utah. It's Danny Ainge. Again, he's the one who put us in that weird situation with the B-Ball Paul contract.
Yep.
You know, he made us match the offer, and it was such a unique offer. Now, granted, it kind of favored us because we didn't actually make it out of the first round.
Right.
No
He overestimated our abilities.
Exactly right. You know, so but the point is he was purposefully crafty when it came to dealing with the Sixers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my only concern about going after a player that we would be coveting like a marketing. And your whole, notion of stealing Sexton, yeah, okay. Good luck stealing him from Danny Ainge.
No, I mean, listen, I know
crazy.
that we're not. I know that we're not. I don't think Danny Ainge is a dummy, but I also know that he's got to think they can't keep stars there, right? So if you're not going to sign free agents, which we don't necessarily have a great track record of doing ourselves, then how are you going to build your team? And it's through the draft.
I don't understand the marketing situation because how do you get Laurie without any player? Like who you got to send some player there.
We got salary cap. That's the benefit of having. You only have to trade within 10. I think it's 10 to 15% of the difference in the cap hit. If you are over the cap, we got what 60 some odd million underneath the cap right now. So having no one on our roster allows us to absorb those numbers without having to send anybody back out.
But if we have to hit 15%, we have to send 15% within 15%.
No, you have to hit 15% if you are over the cap. The Sixers are currently underneath the cap because they have no one on their roster. Or whatever the number is, you have to be within a certain percentage when you engage in a trade. If you are over the cap when you begin the trade, you have to be within a certain percentage to make the figures match.
Right. But what I'm saying is, let's say I'm way under the cap. I couldn't send Michael Jordan for a rookie.
Well, if you are receiving Michael Jordan and you are under the cap, you could. You could. That's how it works. Because Utah, the Sixers are sending the Sixers are receiving the higher valued player, the higher cost player, and they are currently under the cap. So they can just absorb their entire salary into their books. Utah doesn't have to match any salary. The Sixers don't have to match any salary because they have the ability to do that. That's what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
So because the Sixers are right, like if the Sixers were over the cap right now, if they were whatever the salary cap, let's say it was 100 million, if they were over the cap and they were trying to trade for a player, the salaries have to be within a certain percentage for the cap for the trade to be approved. But because they are below the salary cap right now, they can absorb his entire contract into their free agency space, their salary cap space, and they don't have to send anything else to match the difference. So Utah would lose the entire salary of Larry Markkinen for the entire length of his contract, and then they would experience that reduction on their side. So the Sixers have that flexibility.
Wow. Okay. I learned something new. Didn't know that's how that worked.
Yeah.
It just has to be within a percentage. I didn't understand. Okay. Makes sense. I get it. Okay.
But no, but to your larger point, ain't no way in the world Ainge just giving out Sexton for a bag of chocolates. Like, I know what that is.
Right. So that's just my concern, only because of who we'll be dealing with, that it's going to cost us plenty. So here's the Jimmy Butler conversation. I'm willing to have the Jimmy Butler and the Paul George conversation. Jimmy Butler. If there was a universe where we got Jimmy Butler, I just need a lot of youth around him. Jimmy Butler can't be the only guy. It has to be Jimmy plus. Now, if it's Jimmy and I don't even know what that pairs with, but to me, Jimmy can't be the one piece that we add in free agency, and then to convince ourselves that our big three can go head to head with Boston. I think that we have to have another player who is a type of caliber type talent that it's like, okay, the Sixers are really loaded, and that's why they're going to be able to give any team fits on a given night. I would say it has to be an athletic. I'm thinking, see, now I like that whole marketing idea, man, because he's the type of player that I think Joel is at this stage of his career can actually do the other big, if you will, the high-low kind of action. A guy who truly wants to take advantage of a mismatch inside. Either of them would, but then on the outside also be efficient when they have the ball out there because they know, listen, there's no playing with our food on this team. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're guys who can go get it. So if this isn't my shot, I'm going to move off the ball. But if it is, I'm going to take advantage of it because we got guys that just eat points on this team. So I do like that. And I think he has a kind of mentality that the team needs. So the Sixers have to bring in guys. But look, New York is building, right? And that team,
Well, let me pause you there because that's actually the other guy that I would look at. You just said it. New York. OG Anunoby is available.
And I hear that there's something there. I hear that there's something with the Knicks where it's not like a sure thing that he's resigning.
OG Anunoby would fit.
Guy, man.
He would fit. He would fit.
I like that more, to be honest. See, I think if you had an OG, then maybe you can also get a closer in a Jimmy who just does those kinds of things in those moments, right? Gives you confidence, gives Embiid confidence, just won't let the team shrink. You know what I mean? When they got to stand tall. But OG is the type of player, and that's why I appreciated watching the Knicks so much, is because the way they win games, it's just like effort. It's all the little things about basketball that makes basketball pure. Like all the reasons that purist exists is like some of the things of how New York plays the game, where it's not simply about talent. They're just going to run harder and they're going to get the layup because they just ran the floor a little bit harder than you did. That's not skill. Like they get to more of the 50-50 balls. You know what I'm saying? Like they're unselfish in terms of getting the ball out of their hand when they can see an advantage. Like they don't need to pound it like other teams are designed to do, right? And in all of that, I think playing on a team with a Maxey and Embiid, I think there's going to be a lot less pressure on OG than if he is in New York, in terms of either his scoring or just his overall impact, right? Like New York, it's the mecca of basketball. He's one of those kinds of players where it's really hard to understand exactly what he's going to contribute every single game, but you need him to play well if you want to win. I think when it comes to how he'll fit in on the Sixers roster, it's going to be very simple what he does on our team to play well. And I think it's something that he can do in his sleep, and I think playing alongside of Joel, I think is going to do wonders for both players. For Joel, in terms of seeing a guy play like that, and I think for Anunoby, in terms of having a superstar that was going to relieve him and allow him to get lost, offensively and defensively, so, and I mean, just even think of how exciting to see them both on the defensive side of the ball. You know what I mean? Like when Joel's locked in defensively and he's
it would be crazy. No, I agree there. It would be crazy.
Guys just like have fun on defense like that. Oh man, that would be a joy to watch in South Philly, man.
That would be crazy. It's going to take a small miracle. This is definitely a pie in the sky wish list, and I don't think that we are any closer to Boston than we are before the conversation that we would be until we actually saw the product on the floor, because so many pieces have to fit. Agreed. I think ideally the Sixers are going to have to trade a couple of those picks. They're going to have to try to get another guy that's going to complement, because regardless of what you think about guys like Tobias and Oubre and Batum and Hield, they were NBA basketball players. Like they were skilled guys. I don't necessarily want anyone necessarily. I don't want Tobias back at all. But despite the fact that he was 0 points, he played. He had a skill set that occasionally would show up every once in a while. We're going to need to improve on that level minimum. Oubre, Batum, Tobias, Hield. The idea, shooters, guys who can create, guys who connect. And there's too many things that we're going to have to do that gives me any level of confidence that we're going to be really a threat to Boston next year at all.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a scenario where everything would have to go right.
Everything has to go right.
Catching lightning in the bottle, like all of those things would have to be true. I mean, even in terms of trade deadline acquisitions, it's one of those things that you think you would have to tinker with the team all the way through in order to get some kind of opportunity to play against Boston. I mean, think about Dallas, the way they came on and how they turned their team around after the late season trades and picking up the kid from Washington, Gafford,
Gafford, yeah. And then PJ Washington.
and then PJ Washington out
Yeah.
of Charlotte. So when the trade was made, there were a lot of analysts who were high on it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it the way it happened. And then once their defensive efficiency and their defensive rating was like top 5 in the league, I was like, oh, that's what they did. Because that's what I focus on. If you want to win, you got to defend. So that's why, to me, the marketing conversation was something that I never even considered. Is kind of interesting to me, because to me, if you can't defend, good luck winning a championship.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting offseason. It's going to start soon. I think.
Did you catch? I don't know if you caught this. Something that surprised me, that the NBA has started to allow teams with free agency, with their own free agents, to actually negotiate and re-sign them now. Have you seen that?
I did.
So,
because they wanted to get rid of the whole tampering nonsense. When teams would sign their free agent on the dotted line at midnight as soon as free agency broke. So it's like, how is this possible? It's like, oh, they were negotiating. It's like, why? So it's like, okay. So all they did was just legalize it. Like, look, they've been doing it anyway. Let's sanction this activity and at least limit it to their own sort of restricted free agent opportunities.
The interesting piece about that, and I think I'm right, but I'm not entirely sure, is I don't think that the Sixers would sign someone like Maxey in this case, because he would take up cap space, right? So whatever the available cap space they have, they obviously intend to re-sign him, but because he's their free agent, they have the rights to sign him later on. So they want to use their cap space on someone else, and then use the rights that they have from having drafted Maxey, have him being in the franchise for however many years. Then they can go over and exceed the cap and take whatever potential tax or implications from that going over with his contract.
Embiid's extension as well, no? Would that be the same scenario?
I would imagine, but I think Embiid's extension is a larger conversation. I want Embiid here. I want him to retire as a Sixer. I do. But what's that look like? What is a 5-year, 4-year Embiid?
Like a 3-year. It's a 3-year, 190.
Okay, I don't know what the numbers look like. I don't know what it looks like.
It's like it's a 3-year extension. I think giving him an additional. No, maybe it is 5 years. I think no.
Sam, it's gonna be it's gonna be like the gross domestic product of Taiwan, dog. Like, it's gonna be outrageous.
It's silly. It is silly.
It's gonna be like a 3-year, like 180. I have no idea what it is. I'm just speculating based on the way numbers are trending.
Contract. So Embiid's.
And then after this, we actually need to talk about a team that can probably compete for a championship, because the Sixers.
We'll deal with Embiid's contract at another time.
He better go out and be healthy coming back from France. I know that. I
don't even want to talk about that yet, because
all right, go for it.
He wasn't even together. Like, I don't even want to go there, because you're right. Because we're talking about Embiid. It's like, Jalen Hurts keep the main thing the main thing. With Embiid, I'm not quite sure what the main thing is.
No, not ever. Not ever. So, Eric, the Phillies have played an exceptional brand of baseball this season so far. They are, if not the front runners in the NL, right there with the Dodgers, and then probably across the league with the Yankees. I expect the Phillies to go deep again into the postseason, although there are a couple things that have shown themselves to be cracks that I wanted to raise and see your thoughts on.
Okay.
So the first thing, Phillies have suffered a glut of injuries, right? Still leading the Braves, are likely to win the division. I think they're 8 games up as of today, something like that. We have heard the Braves say in the past 2 postseasons that the time off during the postseason, so from when the regular season to when the playoffs start, several days because of the wild card, and them being off took them out of their rhythm. Their hitters weren't on their timing. Their pitchers were off schedule. And so the Phillies may have benefited from being in that role. if the shoe was on the other foot and the Phillies do win this division, going away, will they have the same level of momentum going into the postseason that the Braves say they've lost last 2 seasons?
That's a great question. I think that this Phillies team is ready to rock and roll this year, in my opinion. I don't believe that this is a team that will. It's that's fascinating because even in the last 2 postseasons, the way they used the wild card, they didn't lose a game in the wild card series, right? In the last 2
I don't
postseasons,
remember. They might have dropped one, but it wasn't ever really in contention.
no, because the first year they went to St. Louis. And then they won that first game in St. Louis after being down. They were down in the ninth inning, and they had like this crazy comeback win in Game 1 in St. Louis. Because remember, it's a 3-game series,
Yep.
and then Game 2, they closed out, and so then they go down to Atlanta. Last year, they had Miami coming to town. We never went down to Miami for a third game. So we because remember in Game 2, Bryson Stott hit that grand slam where he had his walk up music, and it's kind of like captured because we went to AOA, right? So that's what happened in the last few years. So to your point, we went undefeated in the wild card round, so that is having a lot of momentum, and then winning games 1 against Atlanta both years. We took Game 1, so I do agree that baseball's one of those sports where momentum seems to matter. I think that this team could possibly use rest, quite frankly. We see that they're giving it their all this season, and their bodies are, we have some situations where guys are on the mend. I think JT, his absence, we'll see how we manage through that. He's an exceptional catcher. We've been winning without him, but it's you want him in the lineup. Stubbs is not that guy in terms of the bat. Stubbs, I think he's a crafty guy. He's funny. He almost doesn't look like a baseball player. And then
Sam, he is strictly vibes.
He's strictly vibes.
He's strictly vibes, bro. Bro, like, yo, he's the cat that if
the bat looks so big in his hand, man, like he looks like a dude who played like in the 1930s or something.
Yo, Stubbs is the dude. If you're on the basketball team, he's the cat at the end of the bench waving the towel when you ram on somebody. Like, he's that guy. Like, he's like, yo, he's the dude who walks off the court, falls down. He's that cat. Like, that's who Stubbs is. He's a competent catcher every like 7th day or something like that or whatever it is, but strictly vibes. Strictly vibes.
I think this team actually could use a bit of a break, maybe going into the postseason. So I'm not as concerned about that. I'm just concerned in terms of, actually that's not the right word. I am not concerned about this team. I am curious to see the team start getting hot in terms of their bats offensively. There are a couple guys that have been in slumps, and now granted it's starting to warm up. Obviously, Schwarber is already showing that yes, it is June. If you didn't know, now you know it is June.
Right.
He's back. But like I sent you a text about, man, stop. Right, he's a guy who's been, his numbers aren't fantastic, and so you really got to start getting a little bit more out of him as well. I think because he's going to play every day. I think the other guys have showed improve a bit. I am all in on this team. I love their pitching. I do think.
These dudes. Am I frozen? I might be frozen.
Okay, you're good now.
Okay. Well, I don't know what I feel like the last 6 weeks, it's either been like sunny or torrential downpours, and this is what Houston is experiencing right now. So I may have missed your point, but
Uh-oh. Now I don't have you. So Okay, folks. So what we're going to do here, as Malik was saying, I think we're gonna try to get him back in on this live. See if he comes back in. Yep. But the Phillies. Back to the Phillies. Okay, here we go, folks. Sorry about that. Here we go.
Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. I didn't pay my bill this month.
Yep. No
Yo,
worries.
but real quick. So I think despite how good this team is, I think that Dombrowski goes out and I think he makes a big move. I think that there's no way that you can be this close where you continue to be in this space. You've got some older players. Like Riyamoto is an older guy. Wheeler just got an extension. We expect him to be able to perform and continue to play like this, but he's your ace, right? So you want to be able to seize on him while the opportunity still is there. You've also got some other guys who are cap flexible, right? Or contract flexible with Bone and Stock. So you're going to go out, and I think he's going to try, and he should try. My prayer is someone like a Kyle Tucker from Houston, right? It's going to take everything top level in your farm system, but you need to go out and you need to absolutely get an offensive right hand. I've been saying it the whole season, an offensive bat, right-handed preferably, but I'll take an offensive bat in the outfield. And I think we started to see that when they sent Rojas down. Marsh slides over from left. He's now playing center. We're going to go ahead and add to it in left field or having a more qualified center fielder. And that guy's going to be a dude who can go out there. It's going to require the Phillies to send a couple of top prospects out.
So like Clemens?
Well, no, I think someone higher than Clemens. I think you're looking at maybe like a Mick Abel, a pitcher. You're not going to send like a Andrew Payne or nothing like that. They've got guys in the system deep, like a Justin Crawford, whatever it is, who's one of the higher outfield prospects. They'll send out, I think, a pitcher, and they may look at a catcher or shortstop prospect that they also have in the pipeline to go out and get someone who can help them win right now with some control the next 2 seasons. And I think Tucker fits that.
And he's a center fielder?
Tucker plays right for the Astros. He has been in every single big moment. He is probably the premier dude. The challenge you're going to have is, despite the fact that his cost is going to be what it is that the AL West, which is the Houston Astros division, is so bad that they're not really going to be out of it. The Rangers have kind of fallen back. The Mariners are okay, and the wild card is going to leave some flexibility, although the AL East is crazy, so you're going to have a lot of teams that are going to compete there. But the West is still going to be up for grabs probably well into the summer. So they're going to really have to bottom out and suffer some injuries, which they are leaking oil, but Tucker's their best guy right now, probably long term. So
so he's that kind of splash.
He's that splash. Like he would be out. He's the dude. Like if you have this guy and you trade him, you are now entering a full.
It's crazy how baseball's so different than other sports, where you can add those kinds of dudes to teams like that are already built, like this, like the Phillies. It's weird because it's kind of strange because Boston somehow does it, and they shouldn't be able to. Like you shouldn't be able to add a Drew Holiday and Porzingis in the same offseason.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Be able to do that, but with baseball, it seems like those opportunities are always there. So, wow. I mean, I think you're right. I think that this team does needs a boost, and I think the boost does come in an offensive punch somehow.
Yeah.
And I think with that will be confidence of this team. I think this team's confidence will rise to the point where it's like, we're really going to be a nightmare. You know, like we already gut out games. We already have that down pat. Now we just need to just really be better, you know, all the way through, where you don't have those holes in our lineup, because, you know, there are still some gaps. And that's just the reality.
And I think the point you just made, Sam, is such a good one. The idea that, like, Harper knows they're close. Schwarber knows they're close. And as much as I love this team, my kids love this team. Like, we watch and live and follow and breathe with these dudes. But I know that part of like the vibes is we need to get over the hump at some point, right? Like we just can't keep getting to the same spot and running into that wall. If Dombrowski sees this, and I believe that he does, I think they're going to go out and get a guy, and it can't be like a Tommy Pham or somebody like Walker out in Arizona. Go get a guy who is absolutely going to scare you in case Castellanos continues to underperform, in case Stott doesn't grow the way we think he's likely to grow, right? Because I'm going to tell you right now, when you go out and you play the Dodgers and you line up against Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani, yo, no days off.
Now, Betts did fracture his hand.
He'll be back, though. He'll be back.
He will be back.
He'll be back.
Nah,
I'm not praying for him.
Oh,
but I love Mookie Betts. I think he's incredible. But as a Phillies fan, he ain't on my prayer list.
He made the prayer list.
Nah, he ain't on my prayer list.
Well, time will tell what happens next with our Philadelphia Phillies as they continue through this year. Again, they are leading the National League with a record of, what is their record here? Regular season, Philadelphia Phillies, 49-25. I think the only other team that's better than them in baseball are the New York Yankees, 51-24. So
they are
on a head-to-head collision right now. 7 games up on the Braves. I mean, let's go Phils, man. This is the real thing. And like I said before, man, I'm unwilling to only measure this team in terms of championships. With having said that, you want this season to culminate with the ring because, like the Boston Celtics we just talked about in the previous segment, you've seen the stepping stones. They got to the World Series last year. They didn't. Now it's time to get through it. So
what, man? Listen. So think about beloved Philadelphia sports teams, right? Mm-hmm. Like in our lifetime, in our I'll say our viewing lifetime, right? So for each organization, I would probably say obviously the Buddy Ryan Eagles. The Buddy Ryan Eagles won a single playoff game, right? Everybody loved Reggie White, Jerome Brown, Seth Joyner, Randall Cunningham, Eric Allen, Byron Evans, so on and so forth, right? One playoff win. We revere that team, love that team, talk about them to this day, one playoff win. The Phillies with John Kruk, Darren Dalton, Lenny Dykstra, World Series. They were playing well the next season. Strike cuts it short, never gets back, never gets close. The Sixers with Allen Iverson, right? We have a series. You see my point, right? We have a series of teams that we fall in love with that never get over the hump. The entire McNabb teams, all of them, Dawkins and Trotter and T.O. and Westbrook, never got there plenty of times, loved them, lived with them, the whole deal. People were traveling to Jacksonville for the Super Bowl, but never got over it. Never got over the hump. And so I don't want this for this group. I don't want it for this group. I like this group.
Like that's why this team reminds me of the 08 team. It was a team that was really, really good that you really fell in love with, and they kept getting better to the point where they were just the best, and they showed it all the way through. I think this is the year that they are the best in baseball, and they will show it all the way through.
Man, from your lips to God's ears, but if you look at that team and you look at this team, you could probably say that Wheeler, Nola, Suarez is better than Cole Hamels, Brett Myers, Jamie Moyer, Joe Blanton. You had Utley, Rollins, and Howard, but you probably look at, I guess that's probably the advantage offensively. But here, you're looking at Harper, Real Muto, Bohm. It's a deeper lineup, maybe not as talented at the top.
If he's back into form, if you get Trey Turner.
I didn't even mention Trey Turner for God's sake.
If you get him to become Trey, if he's Trey Turner again, then that might be that kick in the pants that you weren't expecting. But I think to your point, you still have to make an additional move.
Go get somebody, man. Do not leave any doubt. The only thing that's better is more. Better than right now is more.
Agreed.
That's it. Go get more. Go get more. There's no reason not to.
So, no reason not to get more. Let me tell you about what I am processing. because
Please.
it's kind of along the lines of getting more. And the more for me is insight, right? So we're believers.
Yep.
And, as a believer, I am very cognizant of what I allow in, right? Because it's important for me to be the gatekeeper of myself in terms of influences, etc. With that said, I am open to various conversations just to explore various philosophical ideas. And so I've recently stumbled upon a person, and I'm sure you are familiar with this person, Bashar. Are you?
Maybe. I'm sure I'm
Maybe.
familiar.
So Bashar says Bashar's basic principles explain how to navigate human experiences, and it says our human experiences. And the guy is very interesting. He's a gentleman. He's bald head. He speaks with his eyes closed mostly. So I'm just trying to when he answers questions, usually his eyes are closed when he's answering, and he always talks about like humans and on your planet, and so it's like, is this guy trying to act like he's not from here? Right, you're smiling.
What? Go, I'm listening to you. Okay. I mean, he's
Oh,
sounding as though he's trying to be profound or a cult leader. I'm not sure which one.
right. One or the other, right?
Right.
So he's distinctive to say the least. Um, but he has these various principles, and I've listened to a little bit of the content recently, and there are a few things that did, stick out to me a bit about his philosophy. And one of them had to do with sort of like your true self, and your true self being defined as the the thing that gives you sort of your passion and joy. But he talks about sort of like frequencies and vibrations and things of that nature. And it's like there's certain things that just will resonate with you more than other things. Those are the things that you need to follow like as earnestly
Yeah.
as possible, because like there's something there that you are naturally have an attraction or reaction to. Like that's what you really need to focus on in terms of like the exploration of your true self. Um, but I just kind of looked up some of his basic principles, and I said, sure, this is what I'm processing. You are a you are a non-physical consciousness that is experiencing physical reality. Okay, like these are his basic principles. You are here on Earth at this time because you chose to be. You were created in the image of the Creator. Your essential essence is unconditional love and the experience of ecstasy in your birthright. The highest purpose of your life is to be yourself to the best of your ability and live each moment as fully as possible. You always have free will and the freedom to choose. Anything you can imagine that is relevant for your life's theme is possible for you to experience. You attract your life experiences through the interactions of your strongest beliefs, emotions, and actions.
This sounds like you went to a black Chinese food restaurant. All of the cookies, dog.
All the cookies.
All of the cookies. Bring me a plate of orange chicken, chow mein, and 30 of your finest cookies. What is this?
Here's the one that I'll just pause there.
And it's no shade at him. It's no shade at him.
You attract your life's experiences through the interactions of your strongest beliefs, emotions, and actions. I'll just stay with that one alone.
Repeat it one more time because I'm slow.
You attract your life's experiences through the interaction of your strongest beliefs, emotions, and actions.
Sure. Okay.
Do you believe that to be true? Let's just look at this one.
I attract my life's experiences.
You attract your life's experiences
through my strongest
interaction, through your interaction with your strongest beliefs,
with my interaction,
emotions, and actions.
You know what you just defined? Priorities. Like what you just defined in essence is I'm going to make a basic ass, checklist, and this is what I'm going to prioritize today, tomorrow, 2 months from now.
Right, but the point is you attract your life's experiences by doing that.
Yes.
So what it means to me is, so here's what I'm processing around this person's philosophy in terms of approach of life, because he also is a person who will say that life, again, I'm a believer, but this is, again, I listen to different philosophies.
Sure.
Life is meaningless. His philosophy is life is meaningless. We ascribe meaning to it. So
See,
an,
that's
in-
the interesting thing.
an
Go ahead.
incident that happens isn't good or bad. We are the ones that determine the meaning to the incident. The incident in itself is not a good or a bad thing. We are the ones that determine whether or not we think it's good or bad. And the thing that he also said is that anytime there's something that you feel strongly about,
Mhm.
and let's say you get in an argument, and in the argument you start behaving and acting that's just like you're out of character. You're like, man, why'd I even go there? Right?
Sure.
When you have any of those experiences, he said what you must ask yourself is, what do I believe must be true for me to react or respond the way that I am? And ever since I heard that, every conversation that I have, as soon as like I start having a feeling, and like whether it's like my blood or just temperature is raising, or like I feel like I'm getting
Yeah.
more passionate,
Yeah.
I'm starting to stop myself and say, okay, Sam, what's the fundamental thing that you believe is true that is triggering
That's
your
what I tell
reaction
you this
in
to
this
react to this.
conversation?
Yes. Yes.
Because I don't have to respond this way, right? Like it could all just be a theoretical exercise, but now I'm emotionally involved. Why? Why am I emotionally involved in this conversation? What do I believe is true that is now engaging an emotional response to it? And when I explore that, it's like, is that truly what I believe?
Mhm.
Or if it's something that was given to me to believe, and so I'm running with it. And the reason I'm talking about this is when I think about the opportunities that we have in front of us, as you and I look at each other right now on a live feed while we're thousands of miles away, two black men growing up in the same neighborhood that are now thousands of miles away, raising a family, understanding sort of like what we are trying to achieve on behalf of our family, right? What tools we have to obtain those things. I'm recognizing that I can choose to either be consumed with things that will hinder me from getting there because they exist. So it's not that they don't exist, but I can choose to focus on the things that will or could stop me from achieving what I want to achieve, or have a mindset in terms of focusing on just going after what it is that I want, knowing regardless of things that could stop me from getting there, it would still have to be what I would have to believe to be true, right?
Mhm.
And so if I can actually have control and agency of that, then it's like there's a world where I can navigate a lot of things if I can hone in on in the moment how to change a perspective in real time that allows me to have an advantage and not be disadvantaged based off of a belief system that I'm choosing to have. Because again, the scenario in itself isn't good or bad for me, but I can choose to look at it in a way
No, I
where
understand.
it's beneficial.
I
But I
understand.
can also choose to look at it in a way where it isn't beneficial.
Right. Right.
And it's based off of a belief system somewhere in there. And so if I could learn how to manipulate that piece
Mhm. Mhm.
within how I start to engage the world, then I feel like it could put me in a driver's seat to truly attract the experiences through my strongest beliefs. If my strongest belief becomes I have the ability to understand how everything in life could be to my advantage, if that becomes my core belief, then why wouldn't I be able to attract those life experiences through that? Right. And if my emotions are now tied to the idea that I have the ability to look at anything in life
and
and
recontextualize
describe
it.
the value of it.
Yeah. You're a similar, may not be apples to apples, but a similar kind of conversation happened in Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath.
I love Malcolm Gladwell.
So have you read that book in particular?
No, I haven't, but thank you for giving me that title.
So David and Goliath.
That's how, just sorry to stop you. That's
Please.
part of Sam's community is part of Malcolm Gladwell had a quote that said, I started with a clean sheet of paper and reimagined the world. And that's how we came up with the idea of Sam's community. We just took out we just reimagined the world, and this is what we came up with.
Well, I mean, similar to that then. Let's go down that line, that corollary. So talking about it, the entire book was recontextualizing and framing perceived disadvantages as opportunities. And you're talking about agency, you're talking about kind of focus drawing action and attraction to kind of breed and experience or receive success. This was taking, I feel like I'm gonna be Bashar, I'm gonna be bald, I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna tell you that with this one, he was talking about what the world kind of imputes upon you, the notion that this is an advantage. But what if it wasn't? What if we were able to step back, observe, perceive different angles in which we could take, or routes in which we had not yet traveled, and use those experiences as a way to kind of achieve a desired outcome? And so, like, for example, I don't think I'm giving away a whole bunch. I mean, you and I are both believers. We talk about it. The name of the book is David and Goliath. So just use that as an example. The David and Goliath story, heavily armored soldier, well-worn, experienced, veteran, swords and helmets and heavily gilded armor. He was ready for battle. He came out and challenged everyone, and everyone was fearful and fearful of being conquered and backed away. Young shepherd boy David comes out. He's like, I'm going to go ahead and put your armor on. Talking to one of his brothers. He's got a slingshot. He's going to go out there and try to fight this guy. And everything about him says, I'm going to get rolled because I'm small. I don't have gear that fits my body, and I've only got a slingshot. If you just look at the tail of the tape right there, you would probably say the fight's not going to go well for the homie, right? Because he is small. He was ill-equipped. He did not have the battle experience. That's our perception, right? That's the notion that we see things as they are, and the outcome is likely to be this. So this is all we are focused on. We are focused on the negative. We are focused on the work circumstance. We are focused on things that distract us from our interests. However, the opportunity existed where it's like, well, hold on. He's faster. He doesn't have his vision impeded because he didn't have a helmet that narrowed his eyesight. He had a ranged weapon. So he wasn't going to need to be within arm's grasp of like a sword swing, because he can hit you with, and he was lethal with he was Steph Curry with the slingshot, right? He was able to hit you from deep because he was able to pick guys off who were attacking his sheep, or pick animals off that were attacking his sheep. So he was able to land a blow without ever being in real danger. He was never threatened. He was never physically exhausted the way that Goliath was, and won that battle. So when you look at it, forgetting the fact that he had God on his side, put that away for a quick second. The notion that two people observing it may have both concluded you've got one guy was an advantage. And that's all we see. And that what we see may affect what we believe and therefore do. But what you're saying is, if I have the ability, the agency to change my beliefs and drive and pull towards something that actually attracts me, that creates for me a different outcome, a different perspective. There is power in that.
I'm telling you, man, to your point, I just felt like it was sound all the way through, right? Like I couldn't find where the flaw was in the thought process around how we have dominion on this earth and the ability to create. And so like he talks about things that are really fascinating, even in terms of why we even choose to quote unquote limit ourselves when he's like, you're actively creating every day. It's like you think about things, for some reason, there's things in your mind you can't do when you're actively doing things that you've never done every day. You know, it's like you you create the world around you in real time to where it didn't exist for you before, and yet there's something in your mind that you believe you are unable to do when your life is evidence that you are constantly doing. You know, like, and then he goes into this whole other theoretical exercise that I'll probably just stop there, because he talks about this one concept around memories, and here's where I'll say it's fascinating, because he, in his thing, I think the first one I said is you are a non-physical consciousness that is experiencing a physical reality. But then he also it has something to do with like the kind of like when things are happening, because from his perspective, everything is all connected, right? Like this whole time and space, and time is relative, because he's like, think about even a memory. A memory, he's like, a memory isn't created in the past. Like when you have a memory, you are actively creating the memory. What you are thinking about, that memory you're thinking about, you are actively creating. And the evidence of it is there can be a memory you have in which you receive new information that then changes the memory. So then he says, how is that possible? You haven't gone into the past. So how is it that you are now able to have a different understanding of a past event that has now changed you, right? Like an example, I'm a twin. Growing up, I always thought that the reason we were older, a little bit older than our classmates, is because we went to kindergarten twice because I didn't advance. And because we were twins, my parents didn't want to separate us. So I thought that all the way through life. And then it was our senior year, Drew was picking on me in the kitchen, and my mom overheard the conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, you've been holding me back since kindergarten." Right? He said it something like that. And then he went on and like telling a friend, "Yeah, um, he held me back in kindergarten. So I do kindergarten twice." And my mom was like, "That's not true." And we both kind of looked up, and then she explained, not only was that not true, but he was the one who held me back. She's
Oh,
like,
no.
"No, Drew, you were the one who didn't get through kindergarten. We
Oh,
didn't want to
no.
separate Sam. We didn't want Sam to go ahead without you." And she was like, "In fact, Sam did everything first. He walked first. He talked first. He's taller than you, like everything first." But it went into a deeper conversation about my birth, because even though we were twins, he was born naturally. I was born cesarean 40 minutes later, um, with the cord around my neck and no lifeline. Like I was born dead. Like I was a stillborn baby, right?
Mm.
And so once they started getting a heartbeat again after I was delivered, they were then preparing my parents to raise a vegetable, because they said,
Oh,
unfortunately,
wow.
he hasn't had oxygen for 40 minutes. So this baby is going to be fine, but this baby is probably going to have some special needs, right? Like in the 80s, they called us vegetables, right? So that was what they were thinking life was going to be for them. But the fact that the Lord allowed me to do everything first for them was a sign that I was okay. Because they feel that if I did everything after Drew, even if I was fine, they would have just assumed that part of it has to do with my, again, belief system.
Development.
They would have believed their belief system, they would have believed that it's due to my birth experience as to why I'm delayed in doing things after Drew. But the fact I did everything first gave informed their belief system
Mm.
that I was fine. And so in hearing that in high school, it changed me in terms of a historical event, right? I didn't go in the past, I didn't change history, but now my understanding of my past has changed how I thought about myself from that moment. Instead of thinking I was the kid who couldn't get through kindergarten, and like Drew has been holding this over my
Yeah.
head and held me back. Now all of a sudden, like I'm like, whoa, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
You gotta talk. You can't let Drew hold. You can't let Drew do that to you. You can't let Drew do that to you, man. Drew's a pastor now. Y'all can't. You gotta go repent.
The point is, it changed me, even though
Yeah.
nothing changed in my past. But my past changed to me. I am now I was now fueled by an event that had occurred, but now I'm looking at it in a way that has different meaning for me. Right?
I mean, I understand that idea. I would probably choose to be a little bit more reductive in how I would explain it, because I look at something like gaining a fresh perspective or having a different, or acquiring new information. Right? We now know better, so we do better. Right? And I think about that, the same kind of grace that I hope I give my kids is the same kind of grace that I probably didn't give my parents, because I didn't know what they were dealing with when I was a child, or a young child. And so, now looking back at the same things that I remember from the 80s, 90s, and so on, I look at them with a different set of eyes. Events still happened. The event has not changed, but I now know better, and my perspective on that event now shapes the way in which I may recall or feel towards that thing. So, where I might have had animosity or hurt or resentment or joy or being naive, whatever the experience was at that time, the fact that I now know that there were certain challenges that my parents had to go through while they were trying to provide for us, or things that my family was dealing with in spite of, however it might have been reflected in the home, it shapes the way in which I think I see it now in this stage of my life. So I appreciate it differently. So I don't know. It sounds like have you ever seen Back to the Future?
I have. But I'm gonna stop you right now, and I'm gonna see if I can cue this up for us to both review, just based off of what you just said. So, folks, this is something's happening in real time.
I see what you. Is this Bashar?
Nope. It's even better than that.
Okay.
Share screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes. Oh boy. Yeah, this is you. This is your brother.
On Sunday.
Is this your father also?
My dad.
Okay.
This was this Sunday at church, Father's Day, and my dad just asked for me to ask him a question on Father's Day. And so just listen to what you just said, okay? And then listen to this statement. Make sure the audio is good. Can you hear it?
Low, but I can't hear it.
Not necessarily. I would like to make a statement though. It's Father's Day. I just want to say, Dad, that I love you. And you can. It's interesting.
It's low, but yes.
To understand you. It's one thing for a son to observe a father. It's another thing for a son to become a father and have a different understanding of his father. And so, Dad, all the things that you've done for us, the discipline to allow us to avoid circumstances that were never meant for us. I recognize so many times you made decisions that we felt were unpopular, but you knew more than we did, and you were willing to deal with whatever angst we had in that moment because you understood more than we did. And I just want to say thank you, and I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's well said.
Right. So I just thought, I was like, wow, I just said these words and I got proof that I just said these words. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, first of all, that's well said. And I'm sure your father appreciates. That's a beautiful sentiment to be shared. I think it I don't know, to put it to the Father's Day conversation. It's interesting. One of the things you talked about is now, difficult decisions and unpopular opinions, and because he knew more. Now that I know more, I think I love my father differently now that I have my children. And I love my children a lot more almost because of what I knew my father was dealing with. Right? Like, the world is going on around you. Sometimes the world comes into your home. Sometimes your focus is on the world, but you've got little people at the house. So I thank God for the grace in kind of growing through all of that, and the grace afforded to me as a very petulant and probably impatient and certainly impulsive child. And so, I'm thankful for that. But it doesn't change the memory for me it just changes kind of the depth and breadth of what I felt about it now from this chair as opposed to 20 years ago, whenever I experienced the moment.
Well, see, here's where it has changed the memory for me, because it made me look at myself. Before, I'm always looking at him. Now, when I look at the memory, I'm looking at me. And so it,
but you know what? I mean, I think, but that's part of it, though. I mean, when you look at it, you knew again. It's not to make a very crass analogy, but it's almost like somebody using the word colored, right? Like, don't call me colored now. I'm not. Right? That's what was okay then. That's what we knew then. That's what was expected then. When you were a child, you were behaving like a child then. You are certainly not a child now. You're the head of your household. You are a husband. You are a father. You are a provider. All of those things. You were playing the role at the time in which you were in that scenario, and that's what was expected, right? So
yeah,
I wouldn't expect you to be different. I wouldn't expect my children to behave any differently than an 11-year-old right now.
Right, but think of a scenario where it's like, man, I had a terrible childhood coming up, right? Like that's how you felt about your childhood, and then you experience other people's childhoods. You look back and you're like, you know what, made my childhood wasn't that bad.
Well, I mean,
that's a real reality for folks, right? Where they think things are really bad, and all of a sudden they get exposed to what's worse, and they're like, whoa. Actually, I didn't have that bad. My parents did provide. I didn't go without this. I didn't go without that. Wow. Right. And all of a sudden, like, they have a different opinion moving forward of their childhood.
Yeah.
You know, like the things that they endured, they don't look at it the same way. You know, it's like, wow, this actually made me. You know, I needed to go through this. You know, they have different appreciation. You know, they're not lamenting everything about what was before. It's like, man, like if I didn't go through this, I wouldn't be this now.
Right.
So I do believe that there are. So again, for me, it's just about the idea that I'm processing that life is so fantastic that way, where you can just get a new concept can be introduced into your mind, and it just sort of like it can have such a vast impact on your worldview, and your ability, and just your overall consciousness. You know what I mean? I just think like that to me is just the fascination of life. And the ability to have conversations with a friend like you, you know, just mining through it in real time.
It's powerful.
It speaks to the relationship value that is afforded to us as people on this earth. You know, and so we all really need to do more exploration with others.
It's powerful, and it's encouraging to know and think that you're not necessarily bound. I mean, barring terrible and unusual circumstances, that you're bound to a certain condition, that your vision is broader than what you might see in front of you. And it can be, and even if it is a temporary experience, I'm speaking to myself, I'm almost trying to encourage myself in this moment right now, that it can be brought in by things that you either later learn, acquire, other people, mining a relationship in the conversation. No, that is encouraging.
Yeah, man. So I appreciate you. This was the Broad Street episode, processing episode 14. So it was broad. You know, we took it there a little bit in terms of, you know, just an overall concept. And, you know, I would encourage everyone who watches this episode at some point in the future, you know, to reconsider, you know, what it is that you believe is true as you have various conversations, as you know, just have different positions on life. You know, I think it's just in our own best interest for us to really truly understand our why, and not just move through life with a why that is guiding us that we've never explored. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's passed down and you just accept it, and it may not be something you ever thought about truly. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't even my why.
Yeah.
I understand that this is the belief system, but now that the fact that I can pull it out and look at it, it's like, you know what? I don't want this belief system. This isn't mine.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm going to create my own and put that in. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, this is a whole different equation here. You know? So we have the capacity to do that. And I think we should all delve into that process. I know when I even think about what's up next for Sam's community and it's sort of the in-person engagements that we have, we're going to be doing some work together.
You know, hey man, listen, do me a favor and have one. I am coming back that way towards the back half of July. So
excellent. So perfect.
So we'll talk about it. But let's figure it out then.
Done. Done. We'll plan the dinner around your arrival.
That'd be dope.
There it is.
That'd be dope. I look forward to it.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Broad Street episode of Processing. Again, please feel free to hit the like button on the way out. And we are sorry, a little tongue-tied, but as always, we enjoy the opportunity just to share with you all. Please join us again next week. We're going to be switching over to Wednesday nights. So again, we are going to be live. We are going to drop a link. We'll notify you. You can join us on the show. All we ask is that you cam up first. That is our only request, that you cam up, join the conversation. We'll always put the segments out there. But again, what are you processing? Processing with Sam and Malik, back in action, episode 14, Broad Street edition. Malik, anything for our listeners, for our viewers?
Hey man, happy Juneteenth, man. Go get some red velvet cake.
There it is.
All right.
Next time, folks.
Be well.
Peace.